The Andy Moore Automotive Group Hotline celebrating 100 days until the Indianapolis 500, and I'm sure probably celebrating coming up on Sunday, given what has taken place with Connor Daly leading up to Daytona on Sunday. Speedway Press Doug Boles joins us. The household just a little bit excited about this?
You know, you talked about having bourbon next Friday. You got to invite me, man, because I'm going to need some after the last 24 hours, and then certainly getting ready for the 100 days out. But yeah, last night was really, really cool for Connor. I unfortunately had to leave Daytona just about the time the duels started to fly back home, and I got Beth there, and so Beth was down there with him, which was good. But just kind of watching it on the plane and seeing the whole thing unfold, it was it was not something that we thought would happen. That the team was really struggling, and just fate played into his hand, and that's kind of cool. He gets a chance to start a Daytona 500.
I haven't had a chance to talk to him, but you can tell me, how did that seat and that whole situation evolve over the past couple of weeks, Doug?
Well, so last year, Bitnile, who's his sponsor in IndyCar, asked him if he'd be interested in running a Cup car at some point in time. He said, well, absolutely. And then they worked a deal with Floyd Mayweather's team, the TMT team, and Connor actually ran the Cup race on the Charlotte road course last fall, which was his first Cup race. And then they just continued to talk, and then the deal came together. They all collectively, including Connor, were talking to about potentially putting Elio in for the 500, and then having Connor run a variety of the road course races for that team this year. And then ultimately they just decided, let's just put Connor in the 500 and also some of these road course races. So it's just a kind of cool deal that the guys at Bitnile are really committed to Connor and have given him a pretty cool opportunity to do something only a handful of drivers have done, which is start the Daytona 500 and the Indy 500 in the same year.
How many state of Indiana products are in that race on Sunday? Briscoe,
Justin Haley, and Chase Briscoe for sure. Yeah. Those two that are obviously pretty strong. And then you got guys who spend a lot of time in Indiana, like Christopher Bell and Kyle Larson, and they're not Hoosiers necessarily, but certainly are not unfamiliar to short track fans around here. So, but Chase Briscoe and Justin, Chase and Connor have built a really close relationship, and a lot of those guys have really sort of been mentoring Connor, because they got no practice, right? He'd never been in the car. He'd never been in the car on an oval like that with all the drafting, and they just said, hey, here you go. And if you saw the start of the race, the car was not exactly prepared great. So they've got some work to do in there. They've got a practice session today, or this evening, so hopefully that'll help.
What did he do to prepare for that? Was that one of those video game type of things?
There's really nothing you can do to prepare for that, right? I mean, it's just
jump in there, huh?
You just jump in and go. I mean, they could have had some practice, right, where you could have worked your way up to it, but that's one of those things where they just strap you in and say, let's go. And then if you make the race, then you get to practice twice before the race itself. So he'll practice this evening, I think around 5:30, and then they practice again tomorrow morning, and then they go racing on Sunday.
So Doug Boles, IMS president, 100 days away from the greatest spectacle in racing. And I know this is not this year, but just in terms of talking about Daytona on Sunday. And, you mentioned Kyle Larson coming up the year after next. He's going to do a double dip. Is that just going to be one situation for an incredibly talented driver, or might we see more of this start to happen with the Indy 500 in mind here?
There's a lot more interest, I think, from the Cup side drivers in trying the Indy 500. Kurt Busch obviously did it a few years ago, and then Jimmy Johnson running 2 seasons in the NTT IndyCar Series, I think, was really helpful. And people talked about Kyle running the 500 for a few years, and when he won the BC39, the first year we had it after Roger bought the Speedway, he and Roger got into this really cool conversation in Victory Lane at the BC39 of running the 500, and just watching Roger and Kyle's eyes both light up when they were talking about getting Kyle to run here. I think it's pretty cool. So I think you're going to see more people do that. It's probably easier for a Cup driver to transition to the oval than it is for a Cup driver to transition for the road course. You kind of saw it in Jimmy. He got better every weekend, but it just, when you haven't been in a rear engine car your whole entire career, you're always going to be a second or so off the pace, and that's kind of what had happened to him. I'll tell you, I give him huge props for doing what he did, because it's pretty impressive.
So Tony Kanaan, this is going to be his final one coming up in May. How much how much more does that emphasis-wise, interest-wise, does that put, given the fact that somebody that has been embraced at arguably the highest level since he got here is going to run in what apparently, according to his announcement, will be his final one?
Well, I was hoping to talk him out of it the several times he and I talked about this, but I think he just feels like it's time. I mean, there's really not been an IndyCar driver, Indianapolis 500 driver, in the last 20 or 25 years that our fans have embraced like they've embraced Tony. And it's really because of the way, he loves the Speedway. He respects the place. He's a Hoosier now. He lives here. It just is one of those personalities. And I think part of it was it just took him so long to win. And he always had wore his emotion on his sleeves. And I think we all could connect to that. And so that victory in 2013 was a pretty special one. And we always have these conversations about we need more Americans in the series, and we've got, it's kind of half and half, but there's a guy that it doesn't matter what nationality he's from. I think we all can get on board with the TK, loving TK, and he's got the big old tattoo that's all about Indianapolis and the Speedway. He did say to me, though, that if he's lucky enough to win this thing, he might have to come back next year. So
that's why
we want him to win, so that way we have to come back.
That's why I kind of prefaced the question in the fashion in which I did, because you never really know. It's Speedway President Doug Boles, 100 days away from the Indy 500. Meaningful because we just want to remind folks that it is on the way. I mean, it does spark to me a lot of, wow, we're getting closer and closer. And, being in the wintertime, hopefully at the tail end of that right here, it gets you a good feeling going, if nothing else.
It really does, and I think this is kind of the beginning of the serious march up to the 500. It's the time where we start making announcements. Where soon I'll get to call you, and we can talk about Carb Day, and we can talk about other music elements that relate. Just all the things you expect to happen. The first time we did this was in 2016, leading up to the 100th running of the Indy 500. We took a page out of NCAA college basketball when teams used to have their midnight practice, on the day that they were allowed to start practicing again. So we had a midnight lighting of the pagoda or the pylon to get ourselves ready for the 100th running. And then the 101st year, we had a 101 day out party. I think maybe even the 102nd year, we might have done 102. We said, well, this is dumb. Let's just stay at 100 days. So it really just is a great way to get everybody engaged and say, hey, it is just around the corner, and 100 days will feel like 10 by the time we start looking back on it. It goes really, really quickly. And every year when we announce this, within 15 minutes after we announce it, we do free tickets, and 2,000 people within 15 minutes have gobbled up the free tickets to the event. And tonight will be the best one we've had. We'll have a ton of drivers here tonight. We've got a whole bunch of our partners. We've got our folks from Good Ranchers are going to be grilling up some burgers and all for fans. It's just going to be a really fun night. And we're going to do something pretty cool with Roger and Elio here shortly on the Yard of Bricks that I can't wait to see. And that'll be kind of the highlight for me tonight is unveil of our Yard of Bricks, and Elio's brick is now in the Yard of Bricks, and he hadn't seen it yet, and Roger's going to help unveil it.
So did you say that the tickets for this event are gone?
They're gone. I mean, okay. they literally go within 15 minutes of the time we announce that we're having it.
Right. Understand. There's no doubt about that. That'd be fun tonight. There's no doubt. Doug Boles joins us. You brought up Carb Day, and I looked this up because people are saying, don't they normally make that Carb Day announcement a little bit after the Super Bowl? And maybe you have in the past, but I looked it up last year. I don't think the announcement was made until March the 24th, which seems rather late. Yep. Where are you right now as far as the announcement of Carb Day? Do you have anything etched in stone?
I hope we are within 2 to 3 weeks of it. So we're going to I hope to be a little earlier than last year. We've been as early as like when we announced Journey. I think we announced Journey in December.
I think you're right. Yeah.
It's always better to announce early. I just think that always helps. The challenge, we talk about this all the time. The challenge is just the big sheds and the Live Nations of the world really kind of control everybody, and they kind of wait till they know what their schedules look like, and then and then we sort of step on board, and that's kind of where we are. But I think we've got some good options this year. We'll have some fun with it, and then we've got our Legends Day music, the country music that'll be downtown at the White River in partnership with the folks at Firestone and Live Nation. We'll be announcing that about the same time, I hope. Oh wow, that'd be cool. That has been cool. Now, will I like the options right now for Carb Day? Will you look at me, know me, what I like? Will I dig on these options? I think you'll dig one of them. We're thinking about we'll try and see where we go. What I'm trying to do, here's the balance act always, right?
Sure.
I mean, it's how long can we stay in what I think you and I think of Carb Day, which is sort of that 80s,
right?
Maybe a little early 90s band, before we really have to start thinking about late 90s, early 2000s to appeal to that next generation of fan.
So we're there right now. Are we kind of on that?
I feel like we're getting real close, and if it's not this year, I think next year we have to really start thinking. I think we have to really start thinking about, how do we connect a little bit with and bridge that gap a bit. One example, and this is not who we have, but when Gwen Stefani played the Iowa race last summer, I was over there working, and Beth and our youngest Carter was there, and they said, "Hey, we're going to go watch Gwen Stefani." I'm like, I know the name. I don't know Gwen Stefani. So I walked over with him. I couldn't believe that I knew like 6 or 7 Gwen Stefani songs, right? And so it was the first time in my head that I started thinking about, okay, there have to be other people that aren't 80s and 90s music that I would do the same thing. I go, I know the name, but I don't think I know the music. And then when you start hearing, you go, oh, I know that song and that song and that song. It's the same reason we like the 80s bands, right? The young kids go, I don't know who they are. And then they go, oh, yeah, I know that, and that. So I do think we're on the cusp of the time that we have to find a way to begin to transition to that next generation that's going to love Carb Day.
No, I agree with you on that too, and there's nothing wrong with that because I mean that's just kind of the evolution of us all age wise, and I like a lot of stuff anyway, so that's cool. I mean, obviously you and I are both kind of from the same era here, so we like what we like, but yeah, that probably makes it a little bit difficult when to make that next step, when to make that next jump, right?
It does, and then I get a lot of people kind of my age that say, well, you don't need any young stuff because they get that on the Snake Pit. Well, that's really young, right?
Yeah, really,
for the most part. Although having Shaquille O'Neal in the Snake Pit is going to be pretty dang cool, I think, this year.
Who is it? Shaquille O'Neal? Is Martin Garrix out there too? Did I see that?
No, it's Cascade.
Oh, okay, Cascade.
Who would be the headliner, and then the other ones I've memorized because I can't tell you what they do is John Summit, Subtronics, and Jaws, spelled Jauz, and then DJ Diesel, who is Shaquille O'Neal, and I, just the idea of seeing Shaq out there with 25,000 young kids under the age of 30, hanging out at the racetrack, and our hope is that I'd love my goal on race day. This is really dumb, but my goal on race day is I want a photo of Mario Andretti standing next to 7 foot tall Shaquille O'Neal. Just the difference of the two, and I'll tell you what, I think in a fist fight, I might take Mario. Because I'll tell you what, that dude still today is one of the toughest people I've ever met.
Yeah, no doubt. That the Shaquille thing is pretty cool though. That'll be a good time out of this Nate pick for that. And again, I mean you're trying to broaden the horizons with all age and all genres as much as you can right here, and got a lot of respect for that because that's hard. That is a hard thing to do given the scope and the age groups that love to be in and around IMS for racing or otherwise. It's difficult to get something that absolutely everybody loves all the time. Well,
I know, especially on the Carb Day announcement, I'm going to get 50% of people that love it, and 50% of people are going to say, "What's your problem?" And it's just, it's one of those things, and we just kind of keep moving forward, and hopefully what people realize is we're doing the best we can to get the weekend kicked off in a positive way, because at the end of the day, the most important part is, for me, the most important part is that 30 minutes that rolls up to the command to start engines, but the full day in the race is what it's all about, and I can't believe that we get to do the 107th one of those in 100 days.
Got any films that are going to be released that may coincide with the 500 this year at all?
Well, the whole CW Vice thing that they're doing the 100 days leading up to the 500, sort of behind the scenes of the personalities, drivers in particular, as they get prepared for and compete in the Indy 500, I think is going to be really interesting. And what I think is even more interesting is we as an organization, Penske Entertainment, NTT IndyCar Series, and the Speedway, have stepped back and said, we don't want to produce this, because if we produce it, it'll feel like another IndyCar race on TV. We want the vice producers that are in here are going to produce the stories, and it should be really interesting. And I think it'll capture people that aren't even race fans, just the behind the scenes piece. And the cool thing about it, it's sort of like how the NFL does their weekly program in the NFL, where they really, after the weekend, you're really seeing what happened leading up to that. So it's almost real time, where a lot of reality shows are a year after they've been filmed. So it should be an interesting one, and pretty excited about that. Another thing I'm really excited about is tonight we're going to announce our campaign theme. And last year we had this really cool ad, kind of welcoming everybody back to the Speedway that David Letterman voiced over. We have a pretty cool voiceover tonight that we're going to announce as well. That's our new ad campaign, and I'm just as excited about it as last year's. And again, written by our team here, and produced by our team here, and filmed by our team here. It's pretty neat when you can keep everything in house and give accolades to your own team and not have to outsource it to an agency.
That is well done, right there. It's Speedway President Doug Boles, 100 days away from the Indianapolis 500. Festivities going on. Hopefully somebody listening out there has tickets and will be a part of that tonight. And then you said hopefully in maybe the next handful of weeks, a Carb Day announcement and the Legends performance announcements coming too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you'll get a text from me when that happens.
Can't
so
wait.
It's like we always do. Just make sure you're on board and ready to go.
You got it, buddy. I appreciate you. Enjoy tonight, and try not to be incredibly nervous on Sunday. Try to get a little bit of an enjoyment out of that too, okay?
I'm gonna try and get back down there. Like I said, I got home late last night, and I'm going to try and get back down there to see it live. And then I do expect an invite to the Friday bourbon thing.
Hey, but seriously, yeah, and there'll be plenty of it. We'll all soak it up really good. All right?
All right. Sounds good, man. Thank you so much.
Got it. Doug Boles, Speedway President on the Andy Moore Automotive Group Hotline, 100 days away. And I mentioned that the